Listen up, James Gunn and DC. We, the Comics Pals, think that there are some things that you can learn as you begin your new film universe from Marvel, from the MCU, from Marvel Studios, and all their success. Not just their success, though, also what they've gotten wrong. We're going to look at those things and what we think can apply to James Gunn and the DCU and heed our words because we are known for being right. And there is such a thing as the Comics Pals bump. So if
Yeah.
you listen to us, this next phase of DC films will be the best ever. I want to start because I genuinely do think there are a lot of things that DC can learn from Marvel, that James Gunn can learn from Marvel as
Mm.
they put this whole universe together. So, to me, one of the most successful aspects of the MCU was prioritizing, making the Avengers a priority. People love superhero team ups. We know that historically from the comics, and the films and the television shows have shown that as well. So prioritizing the Justice League makes it so that it's a nexus point for everybody. Yeah, everybody might not go see the Aquaman or the Wonder Woman or any of those, but if everyone's together, everybody shows up. So to me, the first piece of advice that I would give is don't wait years and years and years and years before you introduce us to a Justice League. Have it in your mind, like Marvel did with Iron Man with that tease, and build towards it. Build a story toward the big coming together and pay it off.
Mm. That I think is the biggest thing, is ensure that it pays off, because you can have all of the disparate pieces lead into something, but if you don't tease it, if you don't have something in the background that's playing, that's drumming up that kind of excitement, then the things that you do will fall flat. And then once you break out those characters, or if you have those individual characters fall flat, because who cares? They're not going to meet at the end some point. um I would also say prioritize the films. One of the things that I think the MCU has done is spread themselves, spread their content out too thinly, where they have
Mm.
so much ancillary content. We had talked at the recording of this about Echo briefly. Some of the TV shows haven't necessarily gone the way that people might have expected, or the use of certain storylines maybe get wasted along the way. And so being able to uh, focus on films and very minimally use TV, I think will help accentuate the fact that you're building the universe on the big screen.
Which
And this is a warning, DC, because we know you're planning stuff.
Right.
they've already announced half of the stuff they announced are TV shows.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that that has to be a bad thing. I actually want to sort of counter what Marco was saying. I don't think doing TV is bad. I think doing bad TV is bad. The fact that they are planning the television out lockstep with the films is exactly what I wish Marvel would have done. And they
Yeah.
clearly didn't.
Mm.
There's a plan that includes television. And I think that that is totally okay. I think that can absolutely work.
One thing that always bugged me about the MCU, and I think DC has an opportunity here to not do it, is Marvel uses their villains for one and done things most of the time.
Mm.
Their villains are a villain for a movie and then they're killed off somehow. I think DC villains are iconic. Joker, Lex Luthor, Cheetah can be. Like there are some characters out there that are really, really good characters. Black Manta. And I think leading up to that and helping, like maybe building an antithesis to the Justice League for the Justice League movie, instead of it being, a Thanos, just Darkseid as Thanos, where you have an actual team. Like we haven't seen a supervillain team versus a superhero team, really. I think that's something they could build to. I think Marvel, like Killmonger, great character, made great because of the movie, killed off right away. To the point where Marvel has to do what ifs constantly just to bring back those characters. So I think kind of leaning into the villain aspect of things could be enjoyable.
Really good point.
On the financial end, give these films a budget. And that's not to say the MCU doesn't have, a budget, but give them, a limit.
Oh,
And, you have to make a movie within this amount, and that's yours. Figure it out. Because that's how good movies are made. You can't just throw money at it and expect the money to fix it.
right.
And I'm talking about, the VFX problem that Marvel's been facing lately. I think that with Disney backing them and all the money in the world, Marvel has become complacent in doing whatever they want, and to a degree, throwing their weight around. And I think DC can avoid that while making a profit and keeping relationships, as good as they can.
Well, David Zaslav is definitely going to keep that budget in check. I'll tell you what, that man is not playing when it comes to that.
Yeah, he needs money for the 90-Day Fiance universe on the side.
Yeah, go ahead, Tyler.
I think the biggest problem they've learned from Marvel already, and that's the Feige of it all, and putting James Gunn there. I think just having somebody who can kind of be a visionary to it, like, was it Zack Snyder previously? Not really. It's more like things had to fit into what the Justice League was already doing.
No, it was Zack Snyder's vision. What do you mean?
But he wasn't a Feige type. Like, it was his vision, and other people had to then fit into that vision. He wasn't really overseeing it, from what I know, right?
Yeah, he was.
He was? He was, like,
Zack
overseeing
Snyder was
Aquaman?
the architect of, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, gross.
Absolutely.
But I think having somebody who, like James Gunn, to do that, I think it's a good step already.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, I like the announcements. I know people kind of complain about the over announcements there, but for me, transparency and expectation management is really key, so that when something comes out, people don't necessarily flock immediately to want to give it flack. Like, I think it'll produce quality because you've been part of that along the way. You know what the machinations are. You know what the plan is, so you don't come in surprised up until the movie comes out and they swerve you a little bit. And that, I think, can build up a bit of excitement for the longevity of a character, for the longevity of the direction of the DCU in that case. So for me, keep on tweeting, James Gunn, please.
No, God. Please stop tweeting.
I actually enjoy the tweets because there's nothing really happening right now for DC in terms of the movies. Like, Aquaman just flopped, pun intended, and we're not going to have anything for a while. I think James Gunn even said we're not going to get a trailer for Superman this year. So he's got to give us a little bit of crumbs,
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
I enjoy it. I enjoy his candid.
Cinema has existed for 100 years before Twitter came along, and you could get every single little crumb out of, the people making the film.
Shit, if Lon Chaney was tweeting about his role in the Wolfman, I'd be interested in that. But this wasn't a possibility back then.
I'm with Kale. I think the tweeting is excessive, but whatever. That's his jam. That's his hang up, I guess. What else can they learn from Marvel? I think that one of the things we've seen over the last few years in particular is that the more that they've tried to segregate and sort of go off in different directions with their characters, the more that, amongst other things, the more that interest has waned. And these movies don't always feel like they exist together. So sticking to whatever it is that James Gunn's vision is and letting that play out and not, forcing this or that to be added to it. If James Gunn has a strategy that creates an interconnected DC universe, let that play. Because the advantage that James Gunn has, that no one has ever had, really, is that he has been able to watch and be a part of the Marvel machine almost from the inception. The Guardians movie, that style of movie, did a lot to dictate the style of the MCU going forward. So I think he has a very unique perspective on this whole superhero film thing that he can bring to the table, as long as he is given autonomy, which so far he has been.
I would add to that, get people who are passionate about the character that they're working on. You know, I think and it doesn't have to be 100%. You know, they don't necessarily have to have been a comic book reader their entire life, but they have to like what they're doing. They have to care about it. You know, if you can hand someone a Green Lantern comic and make them a Green Lantern fan, give them a movie, because, you know, we've seen the problem of, you know, someone coming in and not only not being a fan, but actively trying to subvert what the character is in general. And it's made, you know, it made a laughing stock of the character.
I think we already have a good sign of that, because I think the only outside of Superman, what is this one called? Superman something?
Legacy.
Legacy.
Yeah.
The only one we have is James Mangold on Swamp Thing. It's the only thing that's been announced, and he has been. He said, you know, like, oh, Swamp Thing is the one I wanted. This is the character I like, the one I'm interested in, and I have something for it. So the trajectory is good in that direction, I think, so far.
And to that point, also lesson learned, more Swamp Thing. I think you know, that's the foundation of saving what would be the DC extended movie universe. It's there. It went from TV show, and now they're elevating it to movie. They're heading in the right direction.
Dead bit.
It fucking killed the TV
universe.
Sorry?
Swamp Thing was the bridge too far for the TV.
They had Blue Devil in that, and they couldn't keep it going.
Yeah, that's right.
One advantage that DC has over Marvel that they have to exploit is the fact that they own, to my knowledge, all their characters. So when Marvel first started doing the film stuff, they had to rely on, you know, Iron Man, Thor, and Cap, who were not necessarily the biggest characters. Obviously not. Even now, they're not the biggest characters that Marvel could make movies on, because they didn't have the X-Men or the Fantastic Four or Spider-Man, which was critical. DC has all their toys in the toy box. Bring those suckers out. You know, don't wait. It's been a decade, right, since the DC film stuff started, and we only got a Flash movie in 2023. That's nuts.
Yep. You got Aquaman before Flash.
Right.
You got Swamp Thing before Flash.
We were supposed to get two Aquaman before Flash, if I'm to remember correctly.
But the crazy thing is, we were supposed to get Flash before all of that.
Yep.
Yeah, true.
And it was in development hell for ages. So make sure that your plan includes your heaviest hitters early.
And make sure you do some research on the actors you put in your roles that require longevity. I think DC and Marvel have not been that great about that lately. So,
I mean, RDJ, you know, just got out of prison when Iron Man, you know, came out. So, you know, that could be a hit or miss.
Yeah.
And hey, they've hired hundreds of actors to play these characters, so I would say their batting average is pretty good for the amount of people who've, you know, ended up being, you know, public scumbags.
One addition to Kale's earlier note on people wanting to tell these specific stories. When it comes to the directors themselves, sometimes on the Marvel and recently it's been, you know, in the style of the director. I think a cohesion, an aesthetic cohesion, makes sense for the films. Obviously, you'll have differences in terms of, you know, the tone of a story. If you're comparing a Superman versus like a Batman, let's say, But for me, I think having just a visual baseline helps to familiarize myself, and then I can easily jump back into something. I'm thinking of like the Eternals in contrast to the Marvels, or in contrast to Quantumania. Like, sure, those things exist in isolation because those are those films. But I think having something to just unify it uh, probably works better in the long term.
I think Eternals is the outlier there. I feel like most of Marvel stuff has been homogenized in terms of a style, especially post Guardians 1 and the Russo Avengers. I mean, everything ends the final act is the same for every movie.
I don't know. I feel like there was less homogenization before. I feel like things felt different before Endgame.
No, I agree, and I think it was better then too. I think the homogenization and the house style that we currently have with MCU is detrimental.
Okay. Okay.
And to that, I would say something else that I feel DC can learn from Marvel is to make sure that the stakes are not overtaken by the comedy and humor. Look, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have fun moments. These are superheroes. They should be fun. But there are times when I watch some of these Marvel movies, and I can probably think of several at this point, where it's like, man, I want to be invested and engaged in what the problem is, but I can't because you joke every other piece of dialogue is a joke. Every other, scene. Um, every scene has jokes. And I think it's too much. I think it undercuts the seriousness of whatever the subject matter is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Time and place.
Love and Thunder was emblematic of that.
A-OK.
I even felt it in the Marvels. Yeah, I'm not sure what that A-OK meant, but oh, he liked Thor: Love and Thunder. That's right.
Yeah, we can let that go.
Yeah, fair enough. But also, they can learn from themselves because in the DC films, the movies were too serious a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And they didn't have fun. But I will say, to their credit, I think James Gunn can absolutely deliver what it is that we just sort of talked about. Like striking that balance, I think he can do that.
That last Guardians movie, I think, was a good example of that. I cried, I laughed, I had a full suite of emotions.
Yeah, he's got it. And obviously he won't be directing every single one of these things, but I hope, just like Feige, that every product they put out is touched in some way by James Gunn.
And don't worry, we have the guy who did The Flash doing another DC movie coming up, so we'll be fine.
Right, because the director of The Flash, whose name escapes me at the moment, is
Andrea
directing Brave and the Bold. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's exciting. Don't seek out the writers of Rick and Morty to drive your entire universe. How about that?
Put him on Booster Gold, maybe, but maybe not on Superman. Maybe not on Batman.
Yeah.
You wanna add the necessary amount of, like Sean said, stakes to that.
Any last thoughts? Any last advice? They're gonna hear this.
Hire the comics pals to steer your universe to success.
Think tank.
I also have 2 words: Martian Manhunter. Figure that out.
Yeah.
And yeah. I would also say toy with the different universes within the DC universe. Like, yeah, you have your superhero or superheroic stuff, but what about the magic? What about the some of the fantasy elements? Like, you have a lot to play with there, so play with that genre.
Dude, yes. And to their credit, they're doing that. Absolutely. And I think for me, the last thing, which is also something that they're already doing, but I'll never stop saying this, hire people that work in comics. Tom King is doing work over there, and I know that some of that has to do with Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow and all that. But like, Tom King has chops in film and television as well as comics. So there are a lot of comic book writers like that. Gail Simone has a lot of experience. You know, Ed Brubaker's busy right now, but he's got a lot of experience, and he worked on Batman and things of that nature. So I feel like there's so many people who have the experience with these characters, that love these characters, and know how to write, that you can bring on board to tell amazing stories.
Greg
Marvel
Rucka.
has completely not done that at all.
Yeah.
Mm.
And
I also
James Gunn posted that photo of like the retreat of like the DC people recently. And Tom King is just right there with everyone. Like he seems to be pretty prominent in here. And it also looks like a diverse set of people too, which is good to see as well.
What were you gonna say, Kale?
I also think, you know, this is an opportunity to encourage sort of a level up for some comic creators. You know, that's not to say that films are better than comic books or whatever, but
It is better.
it pays better. So elevate those comic people so that a new generation can come in.
Yeah.
Industry, did we just solve things?
We ain't solved shit. I'll solve it for some money for sure.
Well, we just gave away free game to DC and James Gunn. So hopefully you guys appreciate it. What advice would you, the listener, dear listener, give to DC? What do you think they need to do film-wise to learn from Marvel to make sure that this stage of this reboot of the DC universe actually goes well? We'll leave the last comments to you. Sound off below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.